Sandy felt himself being propelled toward the tent by the griffin. He was not sure how he felt about bathhouses with no water, and where perfume covered the bad smells, any more than he was sure about Tigla. There was nobody remotely like her in school or in the village. She gave off a pleasurable, prickly feeling, and, as she had pointed out, Denny's was being tended by Yalith. The griffin pushed him into the tent. Grandfather Lamech was waiting for him with a bowl of soup. He looked smaller than ever and incredibly ancient. His hand holding the bowl shook slightly. Sandy looked at him anxiously. He said, "Sand, dear, you are late." "I'm sorry, Grandfather Lamech. I was talking to a girl." Grandfather Lamech asked suspiciously, "What girl?" "Her name is Tigla, and she's the sister of one of Noah's daughters-in-law." "Anna's sister," the old man said. "Be careful, Sand." "She's beautiful," Sandy said. "I mean, she is absolutely gorgeous." "That may be," Grandfather Lamech said, "but it is not enough." Sandy thought the subject had better be changed. "I'm thirsty. The soup was great, Grandfather, but is there anything cool to drink? Water?" The old man shook his head. "I can give you some fruit juice. Water is too precious to waste in drinking. Do you not have wells where you come from?" "Sure we do," Sandy said. There isn't any town water where we live. We have an artesian well." "And your water just keeps on coming?" "Well, in autumn, when it hasn't rained for a while, we aren't allowed to take long showers, and our parents warn us not to flush the toilet every time we use it." "The what?" "Sorry," Sandy apologized. "I keep forgetting." Grandfather Lamech was tidier about his body's needs than many of the people on the pathways near his compound. Sandy had been requested courteously to go to a small grove which drained into the desert whenever he needed, but many people used no special place at all. When Sandy had wandered away from Grandfather Lamech's and onto the public path, he had seen that the streets were full of human dung, as well as camel dung, goat dung, cow dung. Perhaps the fierceness of the sun had burned away things that would cause disease. He'd have to ask Denny's. Denny's knew more about sanitation and viruses and germs than Sandy did. Although, if he went into environmental law when he grew up, he'd have to learn about such things. Grandfather Lamech gave him a bowl of still unfermented grape juice, and Sandy drank it thirstily. He sniffed at the pot sitting in the baked embers of the fire. Grandfather Lamech cooked in the cool of the night, then set the pot in the ashes, where it kept comfortably warm. "Smells good, Grandfather Lamech. What is it?" "Pottage," the old man said. "What's that? Lentils, onions, and rice, well seasoned?" "Hey, I'm going to have to tell my mother how to make that when I get home." A brief wave of homesickness enveloped him as his mind's eye saw the lab and a casserole of pottage cooking over the Bunsen burner. Pig Ion, too, sniffed. He had his own bowl and ate the same food as Sandy and the old man. Grandfather Lamech seemed daily more tottery. If Denny's came to the tent, would it be too much for him? But now that Noah and Lamech were reconciled, Noah not only came to Lamech's tent to talk, he brought great kettles of food, skins of wine, bunches of grapes, and the two men laughed and cried, and Noah hugged his father. "Oh, my father, you must live forever." And Lamech did not answer. In the end, Denny's was to cross the oasis on a camel, a white camel with a long, supercilious nose, sneering rubbery lips, and extraordinarily gelatin eyes, shaded by long lashes. Noah had cut his foot on a sharp stone, and Matred forbidden him to accompany Denny's. "Now that you and your father are reconciled, do you want to spoil everything with an infected foot? It is healing well, but the public paths are full of filth. You are not to leave the tent until it is healed." "Woman!" grumbled Noah, but he obeyed Matred. "Our den will be all right," she reassured him. "If he is in the care of the seraphim, he will reach Grandfather Lamech safely." Olarid, the seraph, whose host was the pelican, and who brought water to the tent for Denny's, Olarid, who had warned him not to change anything, came with another seraph. This one had wings of pale blue and eyes like moonstones, a deeper, brighter blue. "So," Olarid said to Denny's quite accusingly, "you have already made changes." "But I haven't," Denny's expostulated. "You persuaded Noah to go to his father when he would listen to no one else." "I didn't really say all that much," Denny said. "I sort of just listened to the stars, so I wasn't really the one." "I am not here to accuse you," Olarid said. We are full of joy that Lamech and Noah are speaking again, and it may well be that it was necessary for your brother to prepare the old man for reconciliation. He indicated the other seraph who had been standing quietly listening. This is Admael. The seraph did not extend his hand. Seraphim evidently did not shake hands. Admael bowed, and Denny's returned the bow. Together the two seraphim carefully examined Denny's. Yaleth and Oholibama have taken excellent care of you, Alarid said. Admael nodded in quiet approval. They've been marvelous, Denny's agreed. I think I'd be dead if they hadn't. The scabs were long gone from his skin. He could run across the desert without tiring. He knew that it was time. He looked at Alarid. And you too. Thank you, he bowed to the seraph. Admael will carry you to Grandfather Lamech's tent, Alarid said. Admael's moonstone eyes beamed toward Denny's. I will wait outside. With a grave look, the seraph left. I should thank everybody, Denny's hesitated. He was eager to be with Sandy again, yes, and yet he was not at all eager to leave Yaleth, and of course Oholibama and Japheth. If he went to Grandfather Lamech's tent, would he ever see Yaleth again? Would her delicate fingers slide confidently into his hand the way they did when she took him out at night to listen to the stars, and when they danced under the desert sky? Fear not, Alarid said. I have thanked them for you, all of them, Noah and Matred, Shem and Elisheba, Ham and Anna, Japheth and Oholibama, and oh yes, Yaleth, too. In any event, you will be seeing them frequently. Now that Grandfather Lamech and Noah are reconciled, there will be much coming and going between the two tents. Are you ready? Ready. He would see Yaleth again. Surely she would come to Grandfather Lamech's tent to visit him. Surely he would feel the touch of her delicate fingers. He followed Alarid out of the tent. Night had fallen, and the sky was crusted with stars. He was getting used to the pattern of early rising, the long afternoon nap, and going late to sleep when the fiery sands had cooled down and the very air had lost its burning quality. He looked for Admael, but there was no seraph. Instead, a white camel stood in the dim shadow of the tent. Noah was waiting for him, standing by the camel, leaning on a stick, his foot bound in a clean skin. This is not goodbye, my son. We are all eager to see you in the sand together. Then maybe we will believe that you really are too. The seraphim has looked at my foot and says that I will be able to walk on it safely in a couple of days. He held out his hand, palm up. Put your foot there, and I will help you up onto the camel's back. Even for a young giant like you, a camel's back is a long way up. The camel had no real saddle. The heavy skins were spread on its back. Denny's was not at all sure how easy it was going to be for him to stay seated. There was nothing for him to hold on to, no reins, no pommel. But Admael, in his camel form, seemed to be a real flesh-and-blood camel, not nebulous, like the virtual unicorn. He did not think the camel would lose its tenacity to life. Matred came hurrying out of the tent, carrying a bundle, tears streaming down her cheeks. Here are your clothes. Perhaps sometime you will need them. Goodbye, our dear twin. We'll miss you. And suddenly he was surrounded by the entire family, weeping, laughing, reaching up to the camel's flanks to hug Denny's feet, which was as close to him as they could reach, even on tiptoe. Japheth had his arm around Oholibama, and Yaleth was standing with them. They blew him kisses, which he blew back, and then, without warning, the camel took off, and everybody called after him. Goodbye, twin Den, goodbye, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye, he called in return, trying to wave at them without falling off. The camel turned off the oasis onto the desert as the calls faded into the distance. Denny's clutched the bundle of clothes Matred had given him, what remained of his clothes after he had thrown away the ones fouled in the garbage pit. He could not imagine ever needing winter clothes again. He could not imagine going farther than Lamech's tent, where he and Sandy would be reunited. He remembered reading somewhere that to ride a camel was like being on a small ship rolling in rough seas, and that seemed to him to be a very good description. He bent over and clutched the white hair on the camel's neck, trying to let his body swing with the camel's odd rhythm. A soft night breeze, only faintly gritty with sand, touched his cheeks. Above them, the desert stars gave out a cooling light. In the distance, the mountains smoked, and the horizon burned red. Denny's was glad the oasis was far away from it as it was from the still active volcano. The camel lurched swiftly across the desert. Denny's found that the more he leaned into the camel's syncopated rhythm, the less tenacity the less tendency he had to slither off. The camel was going with such speed that it would be halfway across the desert before it realized that Denny's had fallen, so he'd better hang on. He tried to breathe in time with the rhythmic ride. He would be incredibly sore in the morning. This was far harder on the muscles than riding a horse. He noticed a shift in pace, a quickening of rhythm. He clutched at the camel's neck, barely managing to hold on. Barely. He began to slip to one side, with the skins under him sliding with him. The white camel was racing across the desert. Suddenly Denny realized that the sound of the camel's hooves on stone under sand, was echoed by another sound. A voice close behind them roared, "Hungry!" And Denny's felt a breath so hot that it seared. He felt himself slipping farther and farther off the camel, until he was clinging to the side, and then he realized that the camel had turned, so that it was between Denny's and whatever it was that was roaring. He found himself sliding so that he was head down, peering under the camel's belly. Something was peering at him from the other side of the camel, a face, whiskers, a bulbous nose, bleary eyes, horns which carved down with sharp, wicked points. Denny's looked for the body that belonged to the face and saw instead a lion's body, looked along the lion's body to where the tail should be, and saw instead a scorpion's tail, its sting rattling. He had never seen anything like it before. He did not want to see it now. Clutching the camel's white hair, he tried to struggle up onto its back again. The camel whickered and continued to race across the desert. "Hungry!" the creature roared. Denny's felt very small, very young, very afraid. "Is it going to eat me?" The camel glanced back at Denny's, its gelatin eyes enigmatic. "Hey," he protested, "aren't you going to stop?" The huge face loomed over the camel's back. "Hungry!" it roared again. The enormous lips opened to reveal a double set of ugly, stumpy teeth, which looked as though they had been worn down from gnawing. The purplish lips opened. Denny pulled at the camel's hair. "Hey, help!" The ugly creature's breath came closer. The bloodshot eyes were looking directly at Denny's gray ones. He tried to stare it down. The tongue, thick but long as a snake's, flicked towards him. He drew back, shielding himself with the camel. But the man, lion, scorpion bounded over the camel's back, landing on the sand beside Denny's. "Camel!" he shouted. "Please, be Admail!" He sidestepped away from the monster. Again, the camel agilely placed itself between Denny's and the creature, gave Denny's a glance. Denny's remembered that seraphim did not like to interfere or change things. "Hey!" he shouted. "If he eats me, won't that change the course of things?" With a flash of lightning, almost like the unicorns, the camel stretched its whiteness up into the sky, seemed to brush against the stars, to catch blue fire, and then Admiral stood beside Denny's. "Go, Manticore, go quickly, and don't go to any of the tents, and don't even think of eating any of the mammoths. Do your hunting in the desert." Tears began to trickle down the Manticore's cheeks, dampening its scraggly beard. "And don't try to make me feel sorry for you," Admiral paused. "Though I am sorry for you, you appear to be one of nature's most peculiar efforts." The Manticore turned, head drooping, and with its lion's body it padded across the desert, scorpion sting clacking as it went. "Wow," Denny said. "That was a close call." "Not really. Manticore's courage is as skimpy as its vocabulary." Admiral picked up the skins which had served as saddle. "Let's go." Denny's looked at him questioningly. It isn't far. I've been running parallel to the oasis." Okay, this is Admiral talking. "Let's go." Denny's looked at him questioningly. "It isn't far. I've been running parallel to the oasis. Can you walk a little?" "Sure." He'd just as soon walk as he bounced around on the camel's back, but he asked curiously, "You're not going to be a camel?" Admiral had slung the skins over one shoulder. "Not now. It takes considerable energy to transfer. We do not like to waste power when it is not necessary. The Manticore is basically a coward, but there may be other dangers in the night desert. It's best that we keep moving." Admiral glanced upward, and when Denny looked skyward, he saw the dark wings of a vulture blotting out the stars in swift circles. And that is where we will pause.